Dante Alighieri, one of the greatest poets of Western civilization. Born in Florence in 1265, he participated in many of the political intrigues, the plots, and obviously the treasons that come together with plots and intrigues of the court. He had to flee Florence, live in exile, and he would have been just like any other individual of the Republic of Florence in the 13th century. However, something happened when he was young. He had the sensitivity of a poet, which was obvious when he met by chance Beatrice di Portinari. Beatrice, his muse, the woman in whom he saw perfection and a representation of divinity. Unfortunately for him, she married another guy and died young. What a tragedy. It happens, but he was ready to overcome that pain by conceiving not only many of his beautiful works, like El Convivio and others, but his supreme work, the Divine Comedy. The word comedy is not because it's a comedy in the modern sense of the word, it's because it has a happy end. That was the sense of the word. The meaning of comedy at that time was any story who had a happy ending, a good ending. And divine because it deals with theological matters. He was very audacious. He was not a priest. However, he imagined how the afterlife would be had he had the chance to enter it. So in his poem, composed by tercets, he displays the underworld and the afterlife world, accompanied by the great poet Virgil, who is his mentor in this travel through hell, purgatory, and paradise. Those are the three parts of his magnificent poem. And here we see an imaginary representation of the gates of hell. The beginning of the Divine Comedy is somewhere in Italy when he was lost. Then he finds Virgil, who invites him to have direct knowledge of what goes on in the underworld. Theology at that time explained that the underworld was a cone, like a triangle that went to the center of the earth. Then there was a river that connected to the antipodes or the other side of the globe, opposed exactly to Jerusalem. So in the opposite side of Jerusalem, there was a hill that was the purgatory, where the souls who were still not sentenced to hell or heaven had to remain, purging their own sins. And then at the top of that hill was the earthly paradise. And of course, beyond that, above the paradise was heaven, where God and the angels inhabited. So this trip through hell, purgatory, and paradise is the subject of Dante's poem. And protected and advised by Virgil, he finds in this entrance in the gates of hell a warning: abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Lasciati ogni speranza voi che entrate, in Italian. Because hell is the place without hope. Hell is the place where there is no return. And he goes through the 9 circles of hell, using his political views to sentence many of his contemporaries. He has to pay a travesty to Charon, the trip to Charon according to Greek mythology, who took Dante and Virgil through different stages of hell, like, for example, where Ugolino, the treacherous Florentine politician, was condemned to live with his sons without food. So he was tempted to eat his own children's flesh. He found Francesca de Rimini, who was a lusty woman killed by her husband. He found Cornetto and Pazzo, 2 thieves from the surroundings of Florence. Many Florentine politicians were sent literally to hell. Dante was no fool. He used his poem as a device for political criticism and to express his own opinions about the way to govern his beloved city of Florence. Finally, after passing through the purgatory and ascending through this hill, he finds again his beloved Beatrice. On the top of the hill, she is sent by God because she is not only the paradigm of beauty, she's also the paradigm of goodness, of a great heart. She's almost a saint, and she is in charge of taking Dante to the last stages of the Empyrean where God inhabits, where he finally can see, contemplate in person God as the supreme source of love. This trip from earth through hell, purgatory, and paradise is an explanation of the world in theological terms, but also it has some signs of modernity. For example, the center of all the narration is an individual, is the self. That is why Dante is said to be one of the precursors of humanism. The centrality of the concerns of the poem and of all the system of knowledge displayed by Dante is the human individual. So this is a poem that is practically between the Middle Ages and the early modernity. No, it has many traces from both. It is heavily based in theology, heavily based on Greek and Roman mythology, but also very concerned with contemporary political issues, with a criticism of political systems, and finally with a huge confidence on the superiority and the prevalence of divine love as one of the main ways, or probably the only one, to save one's soul while we live on this earth.